thought the abandoned farm was empty until the house began rearranging itself around him and learned where he lives.
I shouldn't have gone alone. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the wind, not the dark, not the way the corn sounded like wet paper being crumpled right next to my ear, but the decision itself. Because it wasn't an accident, it was a choice, mine. I heard about the farm from an older guy at the gas station, the kind with stained fingers and a mouth that never quite closes. He watched me top off my tank like he was counting the seconds it took me to look away. "Still there," he said. Not greeting, not warning, just a statement, like he'd been waiting to hand it to someone. "What's still there?" I asked. He nodded toward the back road, the one that turns to gravel and then to nothing. "The Mercer place," he said. "Folks don't know where they went." He said it the way people say a name at a funeral, not loud enough to be disrespectful, not soft enough to be kind. I smiled like it was a campfire story. My chest stayed loose. My hands didn't. The pump clicked off, and the silence after it felt too clean. "How long?" I asked. He scratched his jaw, slow, like he was sanding down the question. "Long enough for the mail to stop," he said. "Short enough for the house to remember them." I laughed at that. I actually laughed, a single sound that died in the air like it hit glass. And then he added, "If you go, don't take anything. Don't even take a picture that feels too good." That line stuck to my teeth all the way down the back road. I told myself I was doing it for content, for curiosity, for closure on a local mystery no one could be bothered to solve. The truth is uglier. I wanted to feel something. The gravel road narrowed. Trees leaned in like they were listening. The sky looked bruised, purple-gray, low enough to press on my scalp. The gate was still there. 2 posts, the chain hanging open like someone had unlatched it and never came back to finish the thought. No trespassing sign, no warning, just the absence of one. My tires rolled past the posts and the weeds brushed the undercarriage, soft, constant, like fingers testing for a seam. Then the farmhouse appeared, not in a dramatic way, not rising out of mist like a movie set. It was worse than that. It was ordinary. A 2-story house with sagging porch steps, windows filmed over with dust, the roofline dipping on one corner like a tired eyelid. A red barn behind it, faded to the color of dried blood. Cornfield to the right, or what used to be corn, just broken stalks and seed heads rattling like bones in a jar. And the quiet. Not peaceful, not rural, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own joints move. I parked near the porch, turned off the engine, and for a second, I just sat there. My mouth went dry, not from fear, from the way the air tasted, metallic, old, like pennies kept in a pocket for years. I checked my phone, 1 bar, then none. Of course. I told myself to be efficient, in and out, quick look, maybe a few photos, back before the light fully fell. I stepped out and the cold came up from the ground, straight through the soles, like the earth had been holding its breath and decided to exhale into me. The porch steps creaked under my weight, 3 slow complaints. The door was shut but not latched. I could see the gap at the frame. I hesitated with my hand hovering near the knob. The thought came without words, not exactly a voice, more like a pressure behind my eyes.
"Not yet." I jerked my hand back and laughed again, smaller this time, like I was trying not to wake someone. I walked the porch instead, looking through the windows. Inside was dim, but not destroyed. That's what bothered me. No smashed furniture, no graffiti, no party leftovers, just waiting. A dining table with chairs pushed in, perfectly aligned. A runner laid down the center like it had been ironed. A bowl on the table, empty, clean, too clean. As I leaned closer, my breath fogged the glass, and for a second I saw my own face reflected, pale, eyes too wide. Then something moved behind me. Not footsteps, not a branch. A soft shift like fabric sliding across skin. I turned fast. Nothing. Cornfield, barn, weeds, my car sitting there like a dumb idea I could still reverse out of. I swallowed and the sound felt loud in my throat. I went around the side of the house. The grass was knee-high, wet enough to soak my jeans. Each step made a soft suction sound like the soil didn't want to let go. The side door stood open a few inches. Not wide enough to be inviting, just wide enough to suggest someone left in a hurry or someone wanted it to look that way. I put my shoulder to it and pushed. The hinges didn't scream, they sighed. Inside, the air changed immediately, heavier, layered with old cooking grease and something sour, like milk that died and never got buried. I took out my flashlight. The beam caught dust motes hanging motionless, not drifting, like the air was too thick to move. Kitchen first. Counters cleared, no clutter, no dishes. A calendar on the wall with the last month flipped halfway, like someone started to turn the page and stopped mid-motion. On the table was a single mug, white ceramic, ring stain inside, and a thin line of something dark dried down one side. I leaned in. The smell hit me. Copper, sharp. My stomach tightened and my tongue went numb at the edges. I pulled back. The living room was next. Couch covered in a sheet, like a house put to bed. There was a TV, old, heavy, unplugged, but the screen was clean enough to reflect me when I passed, a moving shadow in a room that didn't want movement. Then I saw the shoes by the stairs. 2 pairs, neatly placed, toes facing outward as if ready to be stepped into. Adult size, both pairs scuffed at the heel, the kind of wear that means someone walked the same routes every day. No dust on them. That detail landed wrong, like a puzzle piece that belongs to a different box. My skin prickled along my arms and my shoulders pulled up without permission. I tried to breathe quietly, but my breaths came shallow, catching at the top, making my chest feel tight. I told myself it could be animals. Someone else had been here, teenagers, locals, squatting. But the shoes were too tidy for any of that. I went up the stairs.
Each step creaked, not randomly, rhythmically, as if the wood had learned a pattern and repeated it back. At the top was a hallway with 3 doors. One door had scratch marks near the handle, long, thin lines carved into the paint, some old, some newer, like something had tried to open it without fingers. I didn't touch that one. I opened the first door, a child's room. Not abandoned the way you see in photos, not tragic in a cinematic way. It looked paused. A bed made with a quilt, little animals stitched along the edge, a row of books on a shelf, toy blocks lined up by color, too perfect. And in the middle of the floor, a circle of salt, bright white against the dark wood, unbroken, carefully poured, like a ritual done by someone who had watched their hands shake and forced them steady. My flashlight beam trembled across it. There was something inside the circle, a small wooden horse, one of those rocking toys, but miniature, carved simple, the kind a parrot makes in a garage. Its head was snapped off, clean break. The neck looked dark with old stain or old something else. I crouched near the circle but didn't cross it. The air in that room felt different, thinner, like it didn't belong to the rest of the house. My ears rang softly, a high, thin sound, and when I swallowed, it didn't stop. Behind me, from the hall, a soft tap, like a fingernail against wood. Once, Then again, closer. I stood too fast, and my vision narrowed, dark at the edges. My heart didn't pound like in movies. It fluttered, frantic, like it couldn't decide where to go. I backed into the hallway, flashlight sweeping. Empty. The tapping stopped. I went to the second door, forced myself to move, because staying still felt worse. The second room was the master bedroom. Bed stripped, mattress stained in irregular shapes. A dresser with the top drawer pulled out halfway. Clothes folded inside, like someone had packed and then changed their mind. And on the mirror above the dresser, words scratched into the glass. Not written in dust, scratched hard enough to catch my flashlight beam. Do not feed it. I stared until my eyes watered. My throat tightened, saliva thick. I kept swallowing, and it didn't help. There was a smell in that room, too. Not decay, not mold. Warmth, like breath had been trapped there and never cooled. Something shifted in the corner. I swung the light. Just a hanging coat. But the coat moved again, gently, swaying like it had been brushed past.
I stepped back. My heel hit something hard in the hallway. I looked down and saw a photograph on the floor, face up, like it had been placed there to be found. A family photo. Man, woman, 2 kids, standing in front of the barn, all of them squinting into sunlight. Normal smiles. But the barn door behind them was open in the picture, and inside the darkness was wrong. Not a person, not an animal. A shape that didn't make sense with the perspective, like it was both far back and pressed against the doorway at the same time. My fingers went numb as I picked the photo up. The paper felt slightly damp, fresh almost, like the image had been printed recently. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied. I didn't hear footsteps behind me. I heard breathing, slow, patient, close enough that the warm air touched the back of my neck. I froze so hard my jaw hurt. I couldn't turn. I couldn't make my legs move. The breathing continued, not hurried, not angry, just present. Then a sound like a small swallow, like someone tasting saliva, and a whisper that wasn't a whisper, a dry exhale shaped into words against my ear. You came with hands. The sentence hit me like cold water. My stomach rolled. My grip on the photograph tightened and the paper crinkled. The breathing stopped. The hallway went silent except for the ringing in my ears. I turned, fast, light cutting through darkness. Nothing, but the scratch-marked door at the end of the hall, the one I avoided, was now open a crack. I swear it was closed before. The gap was black. Not dark black, not no light black. Black like ink poured into space. My flashlight beam touched it and seemed to dull, like the light didn't want to go in. And from that crack came a smell, sweet at first, like grain, then rotten underneath, like something had learned how to imitate food and got the recipe wrong. My stomach clenched hard enough to hurt. My body decided before my mind did. I ran. Down the stairs, my foot slipping on the second step, hand scraping the banister, splinters biting into my palm. Through the living room, the sheet on the couch lifting as I passed, like something underneath exhaled. Kitchen, side door. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air outside felt thin and sharp, like it could cut. I sprinted across the yard toward my car, weed slapping my legs, my lungs burning, each breath scraping raw. Behind me, the house didn't chase me. No footsteps, no scream, no roar. Just that same soft sound of fabric moving against skin, following at a walking pace. Confident, like it knew I had nowhere to go that mattered. I yanked the car door open and got in, hands shaking so badly the key clacked against the ignition. I started the engine. It coughed once, twice. My chest tightened so hard I tasted bile. On the third turn it caught. Headlights washed over the porch, and for a second, in that brief white glare, I saw someone standing at the top of the steps. A woman, hair hanging loose, dress stained at the hem, one hand resting on the doorframe like she'd been waiting for me to leave politely. Her face looked unfinished, like the features had been smudged with a thumb. Beside her were two smaller shapes, child height, too still, too straight. And behind them, just inside the doorway, a darkness that bulged outward as if it was leaning to look at me. My hands locked on the steering wheel, knuckles aching. The woman lifted her arm slowly. Not a wave, a gesture like offering or asking. My gaze dropped to her hand. She was holding something small and pale, a broken wooden horse head.
She let it fall. It hit the porch with a soft crack I felt more than heard, and then the porch light flicked on by itself. A weak yellow glow, like the house had decided to pretend it was normal. I slammed the car into reverse and tore down the drive, gravel spraying, the chain at the gate rattling as I passed. The trees swallowed the farmhouse behind me. I kept driving until the road turned back to asphalt, until the gas station lights appeared far ahead like a safe lie. I didn't look in the rearview mirror until I was under streetlights. There was nothing in the back seat. No shadow, no figure. But on the passenger seat, perfectly centered, like it had been placed with care, was the photograph. The family in front of the barn. Only now, in the dark doorway behind them, the shape was clearer. It was not inside the barn. It was behind the camera. And all four of them were no longer smiling. They were looking past the photographer, eyes wide, mouths slightly open, like they were watching something step closer. And in the bottom corner of the photo, where there hadn't been anything before, a fresh fingerprint pressed into the glossy paper, dusty like old flour. I didn't pull over, I didn't throw it out, my fingers wouldn't open. When I finally made it home, I locked my door, checked my windows, turned on every light. I washed the splinters out of my palm and watched the water swirl pink down the drain. Then I noticed the smell on my hands, copper and sweet grain underneath. No matter how much soap I used, it stayed. That night, I put the photograph face down on my kitchen table and sat there until sunrise. At some point, I realized I could hear something in the silence of my apartment. A soft tapping, not on the window, not on the door, from inside the walls. Once, then again, closer, like a fingernail testing wood. And in the gap between taps, I could almost make out a patient breath, warm, amused, as if something had followed me home at a walking pace, as if it had always known I'd bring it something with hands.